you a great human being, one of our great presidents.
You know, I've been working pretty hard in this campaign. You might have noticed, and I wanted to end. And so when the president and the campaign staff talked to me about where to go, I said, I'll go wherever you want to go. But I said, you ought to send me to 5 places in Florida, but not on the day before the election. That's not good there. It's too much trouble getting everybody to vote. Send me before. And I want to spend the last day in Pennsylvania ending in Scranton. So Mayor Doherty, it's great to be back. Commissioner O'Brien, thank you for welcoming me. Matt Cartwright, thank you for running for Congress and for upholding the Democratic banner. And, Senator Bob Casey, when you get reelected tomorrow, we're all going to breathe a lot easier about the future of the Congress. And I tell the truth, Kathleen Kane or what. People said, who is this woman and what's going to happen? All these guys from Philadelphia and Pittsburgh called me. I said, you wait. And every single person who questioned my judgment has come up to me in the last 2 months and said, boy, were you right about her. She's great. And so tomorrow you're going to elect her Attorney General. And she'll be the first Democratic attorney in her head. And remember what I told you when I was here before, it's a really important job. And she will make decisions that affect millions of people. And they will do great credit to her, to her family, and to her hometown. So I thank you for supporting her in this. You know, all of you know that Hillary and I buried her father here. We have had christenings for our nephews here. It's been an interesting part of our lives, coming back to Scranton, where the Rodham family came from. And I'm glad to be here to end this campaign. I want you to know why I have worked so hard. I began my tour through Pennsylvania. I looked up and standing Rodney Slater, who was my Secretary of Transportation. He's an African-American guy from the Mississippi Delta. He was born in Lee County, Arkansas, when it was one of the 10 poorest counties in the entire United States. He worked like crazy. He was profoundly religious. He got a football scholarship to Eastern Michigan, got a degree, came home, earned his law degree, went to work for me in 1982 when he was very young. Heck, even I was young then. And worked his way up and came to Washington with me and served with great distinction as Secretary of Transportation. People ask him to come from all over the world now to come to their countries and help them to design and improve their transportation systems. And when I saw him, I said, "Why are you here?" He said, "The campaign's not over yet." I said, "Where are you going from here?" He said, "I'm going home." He said, "You know, those Republicans have got all these secret super PACs trying to elect state legislators, and they're supporting all these reactionary people." I can't make this up. People are supporting how slavery was a blessing in disguise. Now, here's what I said. And I looked at Rodney and I said, "Rodney, look, I'd be for President Obama under any circumstances because I think he's done a good job with a bad hand. Nobody could have repaired this whole economy. We're going in the right direction. He's got good plans." But I said, I have killed myself in this election because we are refighting battles we fought 20 years ago when I won, and 30 years ago, and even 40 years ago. And the preacher rose up in it and he said, but we must not grow weary in doing good. Because in due season we will reap if we do not lose heart. Don't you lose heart. We're going to have a great victory tomorrow if we all stand. There's a lot of reasons that I think the president ought to be reelected. And my take on it, it maybe is partly formed, I know it is, by the fact that I had the job. And I know what it entails. And partly based on the fact that even since I left the White House, I spend at least an hour a day studying this economy. And so, first of all, I am telling you, nobody could have healed all the damage done by that financial crash in 4 years. But he didn't let us go into a depression. He started the long road back. Since we've been gaining jobs in 33 months, we've had 5.5 million new private sector jobs. That's twice as many as we had in the previous administration in 7 years. We have manufacturing coming back. 500,000 manufacturing jobs. First time since the 1990s when I was there, we've grown manufacturing jobs. This year, the biggest one-year drop in unemployment in 17 years. Since 1995 when I first started. We're coming back. The question is, who's got the right approach to restore the middle class through jobs and rising incomes and give poor people an honorable way to work their way into it? Who's got the right approach to create the jobs of the 21st century and then make sure that they get placed everywhere in America? And that everybody, including non-college educated, middle-aged people who've been out of work or stuck in jobs with no pay raises, they too have a chance to get the training they need to get the jobs of the future so everybody can be part of the American dream. I don't think it's a close question. For one thing, you know, when I was there, I worked with Democrats, I worked with Republicans. Today, I work all over the world and in America through my foundation. Half the time, literally, I don't know whether the people who are helping me are Democrats or Republicans. Because we say, here's what the problem is, would you like to help? What do you know? And we try something, and if we fail, since we're not in politics, we can all stand and say, hey, we tried, we failed. We're going to stop that and try something else. And we keep score, and the only way that keeping score matters. Are people better off when you quit than when you started? Do children have a brighter future? Are things coming together, not being torn apart? That's how we ought to think about this. I knew that President Obama had fully grasped his job when he left the campaign trail and went back to the White House to work on Sandy. And I knew, Governor Christie, the Republican governor of New Jersey, doing his job, as he should have, for Governor Romney, roughed him up pretty good at the convention. He calls him at midnight to make sure that something he asked for the federal government has in fact been done. That's how America works best. When, you know, something terrible happens, like that storm, and our little hometown where Hillary and I live, half the people still don't have their power. And we're in great shape compared to people in the Rockaway, Staten Island, Long Island, There's suffering. Places in New Jersey. But when something like this happens, we all know that we're all in this together. Works a lot better than you're on your own. And what I want to say to you is, I know from a lifetime of work, before, during, and after the White House, that we're all in this together always works better than you're on your own. I want President Obama to win this election because I believe he has been a good and faithful commander-in-chief of our armed forces. And that he has fought terror, ended the war in Iraq, is bringing the troops home from Afghanistan, vigorously pursued diplomacy because he knows we need a world that's changing this fast with all these things we can't control. We need a world with more friends and fewer adversaries. And he got a heck of a Secretary of State. This is really serious because a lot of these budget battles will affect this. I am for him because he has been steadfastly committed to taking care of the men and women in uniform when they come home, when they bear the wounds of war, when they need education or housing or a job. He's been there for them. And there's a dramatic difference in the level of support we will extend to veterans depending on who wins. We got 300,000 people who survived these wars, who would have died in previous wars, who have traumatic brain injuries. They must be cared for. Thank you, President Obama, because he got the endorsement of a self-described moderate Republican, General Colin Powell. And General Powell gave his reason. He said, I'm for him because I think he's done a good job with the national security, because he's not too eager to go to war, but he's not afraid to use our military resources. And because his opponent, Governor Romney's foreign policy advisors, are all those neocons that drove us into war in Iraq on bad intelligence. I'm for Barack Obama. You should be too. Yeah. I'm for him because of something that, believe it or not, President George W. Bush said one time. Wait. Bush, he said this. At least with Bush, you knew where he stood. He and I have become friends. We have these huge arguments, but I don't have to worry about him changing his position in mid-sentence. And we've helped a lot of people in Haiti working together. But anyway, what he said one time was the president is the decider-in-chief. Remember when he said that? And a lot of people made fun of him. I told Hillary when he said it, I said, Hillary, they're going to make fun of him, but that's exactly what the job is. All the easy decisions get made by somebody else. They send you a little one-page memo. They say 100% of your staff thinks X, and all the congressional leaders think the same thing, and check yes or no. It's the hard decision when you've got to be decider-in-chief. Barack Obama decided to sign the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. And by the way, all of us who grew up in a family where mom and dad both worked know that it's not just a woman's issue, that no husband wants his wife not to be paid equal pay for equal work, because it makes it a lot easier to raise the kids. So when Governor Romney was asked in the second debate, well, Governor, would you have signed this? And just two answers, yes or no. He said, He said, you know, they brought me a bunch of binders with women's names in it. He wouldn't answer. Now, I'm telling you, in the next 4 years, the president is going to have much harder decisions to make than whether you would have signed a law that has already been on the books 2 years. I want Barack Obama to be the decider of change. I'm for him because he organized that agreement to save the American automobile industry. And because it saved 1 million jobs. I grew up in the car business. I know a lot about this. It saved 1 million jobs because if General Motors had gone down, then all the auto parts suppliers would have gone down. And that explains why all the German and Japanese car makers with operations in America who didn't get one red cent out of this were for the restructuring, because they would have gone down. Instead, we have 250,000 more people making cars. Now, and a 4-year high in automobile sales. Chrysler just reported a 5-year high. And Governor Romney was against it. He made a decision. Now, since no Republican has ever been elected president without carrying Ohio, where 1 in 8 jobs depends on the automobile industry, he's been trying to reformulate that position for some time, but he was against it. It's simple as that. And the bankruptcy judge said, if you don't do this, it's liquidation. So when he tied himself to knots and still couldn't convince anybody in Ohio he really was for something he was against, he did this Jeep deal. You've been following this Jeep deal? So he claimed that President Obama was working with Jeep to move jobs to China. Okay? Now, Jeep has operations in Ohio and Michigan, and when I was president, I actually helped. We had to do some work in the White House to make it possible to locate this plant in Toledo, and they needed the jobs bad, and I worked hard on it. And I know that's not true, because they just announced they're going to spend $500 million more, hire another 1,000 people, and produce new lines. Michigan Jeep's operations are expanding. It's totally fabricated. So the first time when you say something like that, maybe you just heard it and it's not true. So Jeep says it's not true, Governor. So he says it again. Then Chrysler says, Governor, it's not true. So they keep saying it.
Big lie.
Then, oh, it gets better. Then the president of General Motors, this guy's supposed to be pro-business. We're not talking about the UAW. The president of General Motors says, Governor, you've got to stop saying this. This is not true. All Jeep did was reopen a closed plant in China because they're making so much money in America, and nobody can make a Jeep that's heavy and send it to China and afford to sell it. If you're going to sell them in China, you got to make those there, make ours here. They bought an ad making the charge. And to make it worse, they first accused Jeep and the president, then they accused Chrysler and the president. You know, Chrysler is largely owned by Fiat. And so the latest charge was President Obama is working with the Italians to move jobs to China. I'm telling you, Scranton, you better listen to me. We better defeat him, because in the week after the election, he'll start coming out of the Irish after us, and we'll be toast. Bob Casey was once on a phone call with an Italian. I'm sure they talked about sneaking these jobs from Ohio. Now, we're laughing, but I do not want the President of the United States to be someone who will willfully run an ad and then, when attacked, increase the ad buy to say something that is false over something as profoundly as important as good middle-class jobs with good benefits, when we need millions more of them. We don't need people trying to steal people. Most know is that the president has a better economic plan for the future. His plan is, look, we got to invest in the jobs of tomorrow. We can't go back to Bill Clinton's economy. We got to go forward to a 21st century economy. And then we got to make sure those jobs can be put everywhere. So we have to encourage new forms of manufacturing and clean energy as well as traditional energy, both. You got 4,000 people in Pennsylvania in the wind energy business producing enough electricity to power 180,000 homes today. So people still selling coal, they're still drilling gas, they're still drilling oil. But this is important. It's important that we do information technology right. There's all these swaths of rural Pennsylvania that could be part of the global economy if South Korea didn't have computer download speeds 4 times faster than ours. We need a modern infrastructure so that anybody who lives anywhere in America can access the internet in the fastest possible way. Obama says we got to access that kind of stuff. And we got to train and empower people to do it, which means we have to put more money into preschool, the race for the top of the public schools, the community colleges for young people who don't want to go to four-year schools or can't afford to right now, and for people who've been out of work who need to come back and be trained in something where they can get a job. And we got to stop this terrible development we had in the last decade. Look, we're still near the top in the percentage of our young people who go to college, but we've dropped to 15th in the percentage of our young adults with 4-year degrees. And you all know why, don't you? Costs has gone up more than inflation. The economy's been down. And lots of families are terrified they cannot borrow any more money. They'll never be able to pay it back. So they drop out and they drop out. It is a disaster for us. Now, not everybody's going to need a college degree to work in the 21st century, but most new jobs will be created by people who have those degrees. You know that as well as I do. And the kids in Northeast Pennsylvania ought to have the same chance that people do anywhere in America to get them to go, to stay, to graduate. So, President Obama changed the student loan law. He says we're going to stop paying bank subsidies and guaranteeing the loans. We'll loan the money direct to students at lower interest rates. And listen to this, let every student in America, starting next year, pay every student loan back as a small fixed percent of their income for up to 20 years. You know what this means, though? This means nobody with a federal student loan will ever have to drop out of college again. It means when you get out of college, if you want to go to rural Pennsylvania and teach in a little school district with a low tax base, with a modest salary, you can go because your loan will be determined by your salary, what you have to pay, not the other way around. And the president's plan